Okay, Lou, let's start with the album, Set the Twilight Reeling. Is it fair to say that I think it is, and I think a lot of other people do too, I'm not sure if you do, that's your sort of most uplifting or happiest album, let's say, in about 12, 10 years?
16 years.
That long?
Yeah.
What about New Sensations? Was it mean like getting out on your motorbike, putting the money in the jukebox? That was sort of like, you know...
You're right.
12 years.
Right. Am I agreeable or what?
Absolutely, completely. That suits me fine.
Yeah.
In terms of even the lightheartedness and fun side of it, I mean, is that an important part in terms of like this is where you are now? Not necessarily saying that albums reflect where you are at any given moment.
I think sometimes people make the mistake of taking the albums to be a little more autobiographical than it's probably a good idea to take them. I think it's really important that at this stage of the game, because certainly we want you to think, we, the royal we, want you to think that this is all real, okay? But having said that, somebody's writing all this, and things are made to happen that sometimes don't really happen, or it's combining things. It's what a writer does with things. So I think you can't really gauge my mood necessarily by looking at an album, saying, oh, this is a happy time or this or that time.
Sure, but even the approach to the recording would seem, with Fernando Saunders and with Tony, that the three of you seem to have a good vibe in the studio together or something, and that seems to be reflected in what I hear in the album.
I think what you're hearing, which was the result of 2.5 years of working on a correction of the recording situation, is what I would call it. That is to say that after all these years of recording, I had some fairly definite ideas about what I didn't want to have happen again. And this record is a result of changing the production, the ways of producing it, which would bring Tony and Fernando far closer together, all of us closer together.
But do you almost make
Not really further from me than you.
Fine, but you make it sound like that's a sort of a, like, I don't know, that whatever you do in the studio is what we hear on the album, like an almost demo tape type thing, which it's not really.
No, I didn't say that. I said what you're hearing from the studio is exactly what took place under optimum conditions with optimum equipment. It's by no stretch of the imagination a demo. No demo will ever sound like that.
Yeah.
The reverse is true. I think if you speak to most musicians about their albums, they'll say, gee, you should have heard the demos. They were great. The album sucks. The album doesn't have any life. It doesn't really sound this good. It's this, that. You should hear the demo, or you should hear it before it was mixed. And I've run into situations like that, and this was set up to avoid that, not have that happen.
Would you think in some ways...
I mean, this album's written up in audiophile magazines.
Yeah.
I don't want to scare anybody off. I'm just saying I'm serious about sound.
Well, then do you think the whole result, I mean, the whole enchilada, not just the way it's recorded or the sound or what I hear at the end of the day, is one of your most fully developed sets ever in terms of a complete piece of an album?
Oh, absolutely. For certain.
So have I just implied that therefore there are some things you've released that have been not so much half-hearted, but only like hit the bullseye 90% as opposed to 100%?
I myself can't listen to any of my old records because all I hear is what's wrong with them. So I grade them around 30%.
And do you think therefore that, like, I mean, even if I shouldn't take it as autobiographical or I should watch that kind of thing, because we're talking about literature here, and it's not necessarily first person, and third person doesn't necessarily relate to the writer and all that sort of thing, do you think in some ways that you've rediscovered a sense of fun on this album?
No, I think that's absurd.
But hold on, I mean, the last few albums, I'm not saying they weren't fun, but I mean, like, they were bereavement albums.
No, I think you missed the point there. It's a shame with an album like Magic and Loss. It was called Magic and Loss, not Loss. The kind of fun I'm talking about in the studio has to do with problems of production, problems overdubbing, having a sound that's really good and then having to wait 2 or 3 hours to try to record it because they cannot get the proper mic at the proper distance, blah, 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 blah. I wanted to have this all taken care of beforehand. Speaking of Magic and Loss, There's lots of fun on that album. As I said, it was called Magic and Loss, Not Just Loss. So if you say it's an album about bereavement, you're doing your audience and me a disservice, because it was about much more than that. It was about how to deal with contemporary situations, which I'm sure you're as familiar with as I am.
Yeah.
And that being the case, how can you get something positive from it? It's not a dance record, but it's not a bereavement record either. It's a bad rap. So, and to say it's not fun to record, it misses some of what is fun to record. I guess you'd have to be someone who records or a musician to understand the fun of creation and watching the thing come to life. But you can't compare an apple and a pear and say, well, this is one thing, this is not. I mean, you can up to a point, but you wouldn't want to have all apples, would you?
Sure, but I mean, no, I suppose what I really meant was the previous album, really, the Songs for Drella. I mean, that one there was a bereavement album. But hold on, before you define the word bereavement, I mean, there was caricature there, as well as, say, things like...
So you're really misunderstanding Songs for Drella. Songs for Drella 1 was a collaboration. 2, it was an attempt, which obviously did not work, to form a type of album that I thought of as autobiographical CDs. And I thought, here's an idea that's really fun. You want to learn something about Andy Warhol or Picasso or King George or a contemporary figure, whatever. Instead of having to go to a book, you know, or a CD-ROM or whatever, and have to read all the stuff, you would put on the CD, and it would be through music and lyrics you would learn about the life of a person. It wasn't a bereavement at all. It was autobiographical. I really did think that that idea was strong enough that, you know, universities would adopt that idea. Then you'd have sections of CDs. Here's Gandhi, you know, here's Warhol, here's Picasso, here's Baudelaire, here's Rimbaud, here's Joyce. You know, want to learn about Joyce and songs about Joyce. They'd have to be real good to get you to listen. But the idea of learning something from a CD about somebody emotionally and spiritually, I think, is really interesting. Hasn't really been looked at. To prove my point, name another album that does that, or even tries to.
Okay. Your point is proved, but wait a minute. What's wrong necessarily with saying that even the inspiration was bereavement? I mean, like, if Andy Warhol dies and you record some sort of a song cycle, even by coming back together with a guy that you had fallen out with, John Cale.
You want to prove me wrong? Is that the point of this conversation?
No, I want to prove both of us right.
Well, put it this way. I'm the one who wrote it.
I know.
Nobody knows better than I do why I wrote it.
But you don't know my definition of bereavement necessarily either.
But even forgetting about your definition of anything, it's like, I know why I wrote it. I'm the fucking writer. I wrote it. I produced it. I arranged the fucking thing. You can't tell me what it's about. I know, but if I listen to an album... I mean, you can.
Am I allowed to take an interpretation out of any album that I like?
You have to. I'm not standing there with a chair and a gun.
Right, well, that's the point I'm making then. So I took an interpretation out of it that I'm trying to prove that is not necessarily...
You just shouldn't foist it off on me and say, oh, this is what he intended.
You
keep it to yourself.
It was a question. I said, was it? And you said, no, it wasn't necessary. That's cool. I mean, I'm not saying that you're wrong in the interpretation of what you've written yourself.
I'm never wrong. It's a curse.
Okay, well now...
That's a great line this designer I know in New York used on me. I've been waiting for weeks.
I'm never wrong, it's a curse.
Yeah.
If there's a few things you once said, or somebody once said, I'm not sure if it was you actually, the 3 things have shaped your life, which is, say, rock and roll, New York, that was probably somebody else, I don't know, and literature. Now, you studied literature in college in '61 at Syracuse University. Did that give you a something for it, or did that actually take a something away, do you think? A lot of people think that when they went to formal education, it wasn't very good for them, really, in terms of their creativeness and for whatever it was they were interested in.
Oh, I think it was really good to be... I met some teachers I really liked. I got to read Finnegan's Wake in a way that I wouldn't have been able to normally, which was a great thing right there.
And what was it about Joyce then? Like, I mean, is there something special about Joyce? I mean, is there any part of Ulysses that you particularly might have seen that might have been a part of you?
Well, I mean, Molly Bloom's soliloquy is one of the most astonishing pieces of writing in the entire world as we know it. Yeah. I mean, I've read that over and over and over. What an astonishing thing to read. Finnegan's Wake, which I cannot read by myself, but I had a teacher who would read it out loud. And oddly enough, when it's read out loud, it's very easy to understand. It's really funny. But I myself have never been able to successfully read it alone.
Well, is that teacher Delmore Schwartz, and is it important?
Yeah.
And like, when you met that guy, I mean, what did you get from him, say? I mean, was there something really quite astonishing and amazing about him that maybe he should have been more recognized or something before madness or he succumbed to?
Well, there certainly was something special and unique about him. He was a great writer, and he was incredibly brilliant and very funny and very depressed. And I didn't know it at the time, but out of his mind.
Yeah. Do you see yourself as a writer?
Yeah.
And do you think that the writing
But
involves...
not just a writer.
Okay, but do you think that the writing involves an emotion that isn't necessarily you, and therefore, to get back to something you said earlier on, don't necessarily take everything on face value as being Lou Reed, you know, Lou Reed sound?
Well, fascinating as I am, I'm not all that interesting. And also, when you write something, you have to remember, you know, you're taking something over a period of years and you're compressing it, and you're adding people in, and you're making things go a certain way, maybe because it's funnier, or it's more tragic, or it's this, or it's that. It's writing. Some people would call it lying. When you have actors, you know, the thing about an actor, and I'm sure they'll tell you, is they're people who are really good at lying. Now, if you want to say there's some real depth to all that lying,
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
there you go, have fun.
Yeah. Do you think in any way that, like if you said once that you want to be the greatest writer on earth, that if...
Ooh, I don't think I said that.
Well, okay, well if it was unjustly attributed to you, which it has been, would you say in some ways that if you ever wanted to write or wanted to make the greatest American novel or something, that in terms of what Lou Reed might be, that each album is like a chapter in that novel?
I think, you know, the great American novel is just a cliche
Yeah, well,
expression,
that's true.
But I thought, I really do, and I still think it, that if you put these albums, think of them as chapters in an ongoing saga of life in a contemporary city in the 20th century.
Do you think that if you wanted to be, like, I mean, maybe not the greatest writer in the world or whatever, but like, you did say on Magic and Loss, you can't be Shakespeare, you can't be Joyce, I think it was, and that your ambitions in that field, or your realization that you weren't going to maybe go up to the top of that very mountain of Joyce or whatever, or Shakespeare, had waned, and that was cool. You came to an acceptance of something.
No, it's, well, I mean, yes and no. Yes, I certainly know that, but I've always known that.
Right.
Everybody,
okay.
I think anyone who writes knows that about
It's
themselves.
not as though you
No
fooled yourself beforehand thinking that you might...
You'd have to really be the egotist of all time to say,
okay.
boy, I can really give Shakespeare a run. Hamlet's nothing. Look at this.
One of the things that we saw you most around this part of the world in the last few years was with U2, on tour with U2.
Yeah, except everybody thinks Bono wrote Satellite of Love. Can I tell them?
Yeah?
My dears, I wrote Satellite of Love, just so you know.
Well, sure, Nirvana, I mean, David Bowie with 9 Inch Nails. Everybody thinks that Kurt Cobain wrote The Man Who Sold the World. Same thing happened. So,
that's very funny.
Okay, just one thing then. Like, do you, like, even if you don't look back on your music or whatever from the past...
If what?
If you don't look back on your music and, like, sort of listen to it or whatever, are you ever...
I hear it on the radio, though.
Right, yeah, but are you ever amazed and gladdened, saddened, or just doesn't mean anything to you, of the effect that Velvet Underground had? In terms of, like, somebody once said that when the albums actually came out first, only 100 people heard them. Every single one of those 100 people picked up a guitar.
Eno's responsible for that remark.
It's a pretty good response. Or it's a pretty good remark, isn't it?
Eno is pretty smart.
I mean, like...
I mean, he's demonstrated he's still here. He's one of the world's great producers. I think it's true, as remarks go.
But it is, isn't it? I mean, like, its influence in the 70s and 80s is phenomenal.
It was a great idea. It's too bad, you know, the group couldn't have lasted longer pursuing it, but it was a great idea.
And when you had what I might call a sort of rebirth in some ways with Transformer and...
I mean, you have to just be, to realize, you know, if you're around for any length of time, you're going to be stuck singing these lyrics over and over and over. You really better be good. And if you can't engage someone mentally, how interesting can the shit be? And it can't be too trendy, because if you're stuck with it 10 years later, it'll be like wearing some really old socks.
Fair enough. Okay, well then finally, Lou, As the rock and roll animal of the 1970s, do you think that you did transform into the political animal of the 80s and it's still with you? For instance, you once said when you did the Amnesty tour, you couldn't not speak out about the abuse of human rights.
Well, some things are just so horrifying that, I mean, I'm not a political activist by any stretch of the imagination, but on occasion there are people I know who are, and they'll bring you something that's so awful, you know, say, I want to go do this, would you help with that? You know, just do a little show or a little, which is easy for someone like me to do.
Yeah,
I mean,
true.
how hard is it to do that? So it's one of the few things celebrity is good for, you know, getting a good table in a restaurant and being able to do a benefit. You know? So you know, people, you know, like U2 or Peter Gabriel, you know, Peter's always ears really to the ground for these things. I'm not, you know, but there are certain people whose opinions I take very seriously about these things, and then it seems to be the least you could do.
And around the time of, say, Coney Island Baby and Rock and Roll Heart, do you think the drugs around that time had blurred the critical impetus? I mean, in terms of the input that you wanted to put into things, and it had really got in the way. And so
I don't answer questions like that.
All right, well then, one thing then, in terms of yourself, do you think that in terms of the characters that are in the songs, necessarily, do you think you over-identified with them sometimes, and you started to live the songs?
That's absurd.
Is it?
That's really stupid.
But why?
Sorry.
I mean, like, you just said there that, like...
I don't create a character and then it's like bad Hollywood B movie, you know, like the guy's, one of these movies where the guy's ventriloquist in a nightclub. It's a very famous German movie, and the puppet starts becoming alive, and the puppet's taking over, you know, and oh, the story I wrote's taking over, and oh, the character Lou Reed's taking over. Oh, please. It's too stupid. It's so romantic.
Well, it is.
It's such a romantic way. It's horseshit.
Okay, Lou.
Trust me.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, thanks a million, Lou.